Good evening, everyone, and welcome to our Southern Marin Mill Valley Community Wildfire Preparedness Workshop. My name is Rick Shortall, Executive Coordinator of FireSafe Marin. These workshops are meant to help you build the knowledge, skills, and confidence that we all need to make our family and homes safer from wildfire. The workshops are also an opportunity for you to ask questions of your local fire agency representatives and get updates on Marin Wildfire Prevention Authority funded wildfire prevention projects in your area. These workshops are in fact funded by the Marin Wildfire Prevention Authority, which also sponsors the Curbside Chipper program, which is now underway. We're going to hear more about the Chipper program later, but I really do want to encourage all of you to go ahead and go to chipperday.com/Marin and sign up to take advantage of this great opportunity. So let me now introduce my co-host for the evening. First is Jesse Fagoni, Southern Marin Fire Department Inspector and Vegetation Management Specialist. He's joined by Marshall Now, Fire Inspector for Southern Marin, and Michael St. John, an Inspector for the City of Mill Valley. Jesse, you want to tell us a little bit about yourself?
Yeah, thank you, Rich, and thank you for having me be here. So for those that don't know me, my name is Jesse Fagoni. I'm the Vegetation Management Specialist for Southern Marin Fire and Mill Valley Fire Department. Little background about me: grew up in Sonoma County. After high school, went to the JC to get my degree in fire technology. And shortly after that, I got hired on at Sonoma County Fire Emergency Services, where I provided support for the volunteer fire companies up there. Along with doing that, I was Defensible Space Inspector, which gave me my first insight in prevention. During my time working for Sonoma County Fire, I was a volunteer firefighter, EMT firefighter for one of the fire departments. And shortly after that, I became a firefighter for Bennett Valley, and which actually, after a year there, brought me to Southern Marin. And I feel very fortunate to be part of a great team, great community, and really looking forward to all the programs and projects we have in store for community risk reduction.
Great, thanks, Jesse. Appreciate that. Marshall, how about yourself?
Good evening. I don't see my video, so I'm not sure if I'm up or not, but Marshall Now, Fire Inspector for Southern Marin Fire. Actually, currently I focus on the role of occupancy compliance, but for years I've had the opportunity to work in Marin County as a defensible space inspection, inspector, vegetation management specialist in a number of different roles. I've got a background of firefighting, volunteering, and doing prevention for the last 7 years, working on private ambulance. Extensive. I don't want to bore you with everything, but happy to be here, happy to be part of Southern Marin Fire, and looking forward to this evening's event.
Thank you, Marshall, and welcome. And Michael?
Thank you. My name is Michael St. John. I started my fire service career in 1985 with Marin County Fire Department and retired in 2018 as a shared services battalion chief with Mill Valley and Southern Marin, and had an opportunity to do extensive firefighting, particularly in the last 5-6 years of my career, as a both strike team leader and division supervisor. And then I also separately managed the Sheriff's Department search and rescue team as a volunteer, and was heavily involved in large operations, including the human remains searching in Paradise following the campfire.
Great. Thanks, Michael. Well, to the audience, we have really a lot of expertise here tonight, so don't be shy. Be sure to ask your questions. So the workshop itself is divided into several segments that are introduced by short videos. After each video, we'll ask the co-host for some comments, and then we will take questions from the audience. As I said, we really do encourage all of you to participate by providing questions in writing through that Q&A function at the bottom of your screen. Questions that can't be addressed tonight get answered and posted on the FireSafe Marin website. We do ask, though, that you keep your questions related to the topic of the evening. Tonight's presentation will be recorded and available on the FireSafe Marin YouTube channel, which has a lot of great additional wildfire educational videos. So let's begin tonight with our first video, which features Marin Wildfire Prevention Authority Executive Officer Mark Brown, describing the events that took place at the recent glass fire in Sonoma. Mark's home is in the area, and he was on the scene during the fire. So there's quite a bit we can learn from his post-fire analysis.
being a resident of the Skyhawk subdivision and being recently retired from the Marin County Fire Department and the new executive officer for the Marin Wildfire Prevention Authority, I thought this was just too good of an example for us to miss. September 27th, that's the right date, right? The glass fire started in the early morning, 3:30, 4 a.m., something like that. And I'm looking at where it is on the map. I'm going, all right, shouldn't have a tremendous impact for me. Should run in, if it crosses the valley, it should run into the Nuns Fire and some of the other fires for 2017. But I think it's far enough south, it's not going to impact me. So if you saw in a presentation, you might have thought, well, that was a funny first picture you put in there, where kind of a dark picture with a little lantern. That's a timestamp. And to give some context to how fast these situations can come about. That's about when I'm hearing sirens. Pull out my phone and I look at the location and I'm like going, that's the absolute worst spot for this subdivision for a fire to start. When I first pull it into the command post, it's 9:15. Finally get situated where I can stand side by side with the incident commander. And as I'm standing next to him, he goes, all right, you're at about 300 to 500 acres, and it's going to be in Santa Rosa in 2 hours. The fire was actually progressing down that slope slowly, and I was actually really happy with the way it was progressing. You go to the next slide, which is the timestamp of 0048. You'll see trees flapping in the wind. It's those trees right there that are flapping in the wind. And again, listen to the wind and look at the change of wind direction. And that's the fire becoming well established in this drainage and making a hard run down this drainage. And this is a high school friend of mine's house. And that's why we have permission to go onto his property. Every time I walk by his house, I'm going, well, Sean, you got privacy, but I'm not sure that's the best thing for you. So when I got down here, the bottom of this brambly rose bush had just gotten going. I squirted it for a little while, got it out, and then you can see not just that corner, but that upper corner of that bush started burning. You see this carcass of a rose bush. You look at the trees, to Todd's point, right, Todd? The trees were damaged by everything else that was burning. The trees really didn't transmit the fire. It was the ember cast that was, in my opinion, coming off of this, getting blown against. And you see that there used to be a gazebo, and then what is Chris? There were some type of vines on the gazebo.
Looks like it could be dry and not a lot of leaves. I'm not sure what it is.
I can't remember for sure, but one thing that bothers me, and it could be after the fact, but the lowest burn is over here.
Propane. Probably fueled by the vines that came into the apple tree and eventually got the propane tank going, but the propane was probably low torture this way.
And it may or may not have been after the house got well involved. But it was, to me, whether it was that piece there, and you see the little architectural feature that creates a chimney type effect, but it was the flammable material that was up against the home. And then the wind pushing the embers from this up against the house and then forcing it up into the attic vents. And so the whole idea of blocked eaves, Vulcan vents, no blocked eaves, no Vulcan vents on this home. And it burned from the attic down. I guarantee you, I watched it. You know, for many of the homes that were destroyed, I really believe that if people had done their home hardening and zone 0 defensible space work, those homes would have survived. If they didn't have flammable material within the 3 to 5 feet of space of their home, if they would have blocked their eaves or they had improved vents so that the fire could not get in their attic, I firmly believe they would have survived this fire. So the newer homes were built to 7A standards. And yes, there was suppression action taken on that deck fire up there. But look at the beating that the side of that house took, and it didn't get into the attic. I have to think that there was Building Code 7A standards helped save that home besides suppression action. But virtually, from what I see, every one of them burned from the attic down. And then Paul, if you want to talk about what you and I were talking about, please.
Different wood chips really reacted much different than we would have expected. There's a wood chip that has a red dye. That wood chip is what you find at that house that's got the heavy damage to it. It literally consumed every single wood chip between fence line to fence line to fence line. And then immediately next to it, taking the heat that it did, we had that cedar chip, and it didn't do anything. We had multiple yards where the cedar did fantastic. And then just downhill from the red dye chip was the gorilla hair, and we talked to some of those crews, and it took them hours to try and pull apart, you know, six inches to a foot of mulch to fully extinguish it.
This is where I have one of the first pictures from May of 2019, that when I was on one of my walks, and so that first picture is of these two houses, right? Not too much has changed since that picture, minus the fire. And what looked like was the primary carrier fire up that slope?
Fence.
The fence. The fence, right? And it's somewhat hard to tell exactly what caused the fence to get going. It looks to me that the gorilla hair allowed the fence to get going. If there had been nothing flammable up against that fence, it's unlikely the embers hitting that fence would have got the fence going. It needed something to maintain the heat underneath the fence, and then once the fence got going, it maintained its own combustion and walked up the hillside, and looks like someone went in and kicked a few panels out. It's looking this way. You can see the handrails of a walking path. So you have that beige house, there's a gap in homes that's purposeful, it's an open space, walking path that comes down, and then the remnants of a house is just on the other side of the gap. So if you look at those pictures, you'll see the second house had remarkable defensible space work in their property and in the area of the easement below them. And then when you look at the fourth house what do you notice in that picture? The house with the remnants of trees below it.
Continuous canopy.
A continuous canopy, and when we get up top and look at it from up there, you'll be shocked how close some of those trees were to the house. It created two different types of ladders as well. Not a ladder up the slope, but also a ladder from the ground into the trees. I think the house with the trees was probably the first house that started.
When were your pictures taken?
What was likely underneath those trees that singed those trees and allowed the fire to slowly creep up that property?
I think mulch, I think a great example is the second tree up, like the deciduous tree up there. It has that nice little ring around it, at least looks like it from here.
Put some mulch around there to help with the erosion, help hold water, so that the trees could have moisture to grow. You'll see the batch of several homes that were destroyed. And in these two homes that weren't destroyed, and then we have a home where you see the roof timber still sticking up, and then a home completely on the ground. And it struck me, why is there that gap? And I think when we get up to, you might be able to see why that gap, or why did the new home get involved up there instead of house to house against the wind? What's that, Chris?
That one was surrounded by Italian cypress.
Wait till you see it up top. Of the skeletons of Italian cypress immediately upwind from the structure. And like I will bet a paycheck that that's what burned that house down. The before picture, blackberry and bramble that was virtually impenetrable. And then let's look at this house. I mean, as D-space evaluators, and you're looking at this house, what are you saying to yourself?
I would say that those are deciduous trees that didn't ever get involved in the fire, and they browned out because of what was on the ground underneath them. Yeah. So clearance shouldn't mean removing those trees. They probably provided some protection to the house. Limbing them up and cutting this grass that was underneath them right here is what would have made a difference.
I think you're right. Yeah. But trees not being the total enemy is an important message. When we go to this last house up here, you'll see that the trees were damaged because the house burned down. It wasn't the trees that burned down the house. That house we've talked about, the other way around, but the vast majority of the trees, it wasn't the trees were damaged because of the house. if we just do a good job of having separation and not creating that ladder fuel, then we'll be successful. And you see that house right there, that deck caught on fire. And it's probably because the bramble that was in here, that bramble that was holding fire, finally started to carry up the slope. They probably had some stuff that allowed that deck to get going underneath. It took some significant suppression actions to save that home, and they were just lucky that there were fire engines already in this area. Take a look at the fence in between. So whether it was the deck that got the fence going and the fence walked this way, probably what happened, right? But it could have easily been the deck that got the fence gets going over here and then gets into the eaves in another spot. I think that's one of the most important messages we have to drive home. How we're going to keep our communities safer is if we focus from the house and work out from there. And if we make our home in such a way that embers can land on or around the home and our home does not become ignited, then not only is your home saved, but homes downwind from your home are saved.
All right, we're back on here. Everybody can join in. So hope everybody enjoyed that. And I really want to thank Mark for creating that video. It really is very well done. And those are just snippets from literally hours that he spent going in great detail with the inspectors and evaluators up there on what's going on. And one thing that's really unique about it that we really like here at Fire Safe Marin is that we typically see pictures of Think Paradise or the fires in Calistoga and whatnot, where everything is just burned down and it looks hopeless, like what happened. Here, there's enough left standing that you can really see why some houses survived and why some didn't. And I think there's really a lot of value in that. So Jesse, Michael, Marshall, again, you can turn on your video and audio, but do you have any thoughts about that walkthrough that Mark did?
Yeah, I do. So the big takeaway from that video is that defensible space and home hardening makes a huge difference and can improve your chance of your home surviving a wildfire. It's not necessarily the fire that may get your home. It's where these embers will be landing around your home and igniting either the mulches you have or combustible vegetation. And some things we do in our district is we provide defensible space inspections and home assessments to bring awareness and education for residents about these types of issues we face in our district.
Great. Marshall, Mike?
Yeah, I was pleased to be able to take part in that walkthrough, and it was very comprehensive. It definitely shed a lot of light to see the breakdown and timestamps of the fire the way he had set it up was invaluable, especially for all the new inspectors that are coming in throughout Marin County. It'll only help to shed light on what we're looking at in the months and years to come.
Absolutely. All right, so around the same time that last fire was taking place, we had the first big fire we've had in Marin in a long time. And although it wasn't directly in Mill Valley, did the that Woodward fire out there, did that have any impact on you down there in Mill Valley and how residents were feeling about fire safety?
Well, I think it brought home that we can get significant wildland fires here in Marin, and certainly we were impacted, now and again by that smoke, along with other fires in the Bay Area. And I think we've been very fortunate up till now not to have a significant fire impact one of our communities in Marin. But this year is drier than ever, and I think having a fire that close brought home that we can have a big problem here as well.
Yeah. Well, I can certainly tell you from the point of view of Fire Safe Marin, it drove our attendance at our educational things like tenfold. So really made people pay attention out there. One other thing that I think is really important to take away from what Mark said at the very end there is that we really can take actions that will make our home safe. These wildfires are not something we need to give up on and say it's hopeless, they're going to come in and wipe everything out. There's a lot of simple stuff that we can do, and that's why I really want to thank the work that you guys are doing there in Southern Marin, Mill Valley, and of course, lots of other parts of Marin, where you're going out there, where you're actually doing the home evaluations and you give people an honest assessment and giving them the tools that they need to get the work done. So we're going to talk a lot more about that as we go forward, but that's something we really want people to be taking advantage of. Okay, that said, Jen, let's bring up the next videos. This is about wildfire science, and we really have to understand how wildfires work. If we know that, it helps us understand why certain actions are going to protect our homes.
Good evening. My name is Mark Brown. As Rich mentioned, I have the honor to serve as the Deputy Fire Chief for the Marin County Fire Department. And as I was thinking about how to best describe to everybody what or how we got to today's fire environment, it dawned on me that we really have three failures that are disguised as successes. The first one is our total fire suppression policies that we adopted way back in 1910. And California ecology needs fire to be healthy, and we've interrupted that cycle. And so we've created unhealthy forests. We've tried to let those fires burn at times if they were lightning caused fires and they were in a location where it was safe for them to burn. But if there's a structure threat or a life threat, then we have to go and suppress that fire, which furthers the problem. The next success that is really a failure is the success of pushing people further and further into the wildland, living in the wildland urban interface. And quite honestly, where there are people, there are ignitions. When there's ignitions, we're gonna have fire. And where there are people, we have to suppress that fire. So therefore, we're continuing the damage to our forests. And then we get to the most important failure, or a series of some successes, and that is creating our industry, creating our transportation, and our power generation. All of these successes of humankind have they've been a failure to the environment, and through the increase of carbon emissions and what they have done to add to our climate change. And just to give it really succinctly, in California, our fire season has increased by about 75 days a year. And so that's more than 2 months a year that we have increased fire season. And therefore, we obviously have more opportunity for fire, but almost as important as that is that the fuels, the vegetation out there just doesn't have the time to recover, doesn't have time to bring in that moisture, and it doesn't have that time to be healthy. So we've created this really vicious cycle. And, as a fire service, we were almost staying ahead of the explosive nature of this new fire environment. Starting in 2013 and a few fires before that, we started to really tip that scale over to where we're not keeping up anymore.
Wildfires are a natural event. A long time ago in California, wildfires were often started by lightning, igniting dry leaves and underbrush in the forests. There were lots of wildfires, but they weren't very destructive because there wasn't as much fuel to burn on the forest floor. Regular fires do the hard cleanup work for us. Native Americans understood that forests were healthier if they experienced lots of small fires, which burned dead wood and debris on the forest floor. They would even set fires to encourage this healthy cycle. This helped large trees stay healthy, made it easier for the native people to hunt and grow food. For the last 100 years or so, we've been putting out wildfires because we were worried that fires were dangerous to people. At first, fighting fires was easy because the forests were clean from years of natural fires. But over time, our forests have suffered. When small fires are not allowed to burn, dead wood and other flammable debris builds up. Now when fires start, they become much bigger and spread fast because the fire has a lot of dry material to burn. Here are two diagrams to describe fires. The first is called the fire triangle. It shows that we need heat, fuel, and oxygen for any fire to burn. The second is called the wildfire triangle. A wildfire needs three special things: fuel that can burn, weather, which is dry and windy, and topography. Topography means the shape of the land. Remember that heat rises, so fires usually go uphill much faster than they go downhill. When it's windy, the wind is stronger at the top of mountains and in the valleys between mountains. So the wind often spreads fires up hills and through valleys. The wind not only forces heat and flames in front of it, but it also sends embers long distances. Embers are small burning materials like leaves and small pieces of wood that can be blown in the wind and smoke. When these embers fall back to the ground, they can start many small fires, called spot fires. When an ember lands near your home, it can start a fire in grass that hasn't been cut, in bushes that have lots of dry, dead leaves and twigs, or on wooden furniture and cushions that have been left outside, or in leaves that are on your roof, in your rain gutters, or on the ground around your house. The embers can also enter homes through open doors and windows, or through the vents that are needed around your home for foundations and attics. Embers are the main causes of houses burning during a wildfire. As climate change warms our planet, wildfire conditions are getting worse. Over time, the average yearly temperature is higher and climbing. Changing climate also affects weather patterns. We're experiencing longer periods without rain, and many trees are dying due to drought. Our fire season is now 2 months longer than when your parents were kids. Many parts of our landscaping are drying out, and this makes the trees and bushes more likely to burn. When we have more strong wind days, all we need is a spark and a wildfire can start, which is hard to put out. Understanding wildfires helps us to live with a natural part of our ecology. We need them to keep our forests in balance, but we also need to understand fire's behavior to know how to protect ourselves and our homes.
The title of this presentation is Community Fire Destruction During Extreme Wildfires, a Home Ignition Problem. Well, so perhaps you say a home ignition problem? Well, duh, we wouldn't be having this if the homes didn't ignite. But what if we could prevent homes from igniting and our communities from burning to destruction? So for right now, with our mind's eye, let's visualize our perception of how extreme wildfires ignite homes in communities. So wildfires are inevitable, and thus extreme wildfires are inevitable. And so does this mean that wildland urban fire disasters are inevitable? And my answer to that is no. But you might be surprised based on your perception of how homes ignite during extreme wildfires. So what is the general perception of how homes ignite? Well, here are 3 interview perceptions of home destruction during wildfires. The firestorm descended like a dragon from hell on the foothill neighborhoods and laid them to waste. The wildfire swept through the community with a tsunami of flame. The wildfire literally exploded houses in flames, leaving in its path. It was like a war zone. But when we look at the evidence of the disasters, when we go and examine the evidence of the disasters, the typical pattern of destruction is total home destruction with unconsumed vegetation. So what this scene indicates is that no walls of flame sweeping through communities occur, and wildfires don't literally or figuratively explode houses in flames. So wildfire spreads as a sequence of ignitions, not as a sweeping mass of flame, even in this kind of behavior that we call crown fires in shrubs and trees. So when we see a scene like this, the high-intensity crown fire burning from right to left stops at the first residential street of this neighborhood, just from 40 feet of gap between the canopies at this street. So even without the crown fire, total home destruction occurs on the left side. generated, initiated by burning embers from that extreme fire behavior. So what do unconsumed vegetation in homes adjacent to total destruction indicate? While not spread through the community like a lava flow, flash flood, or tsunami that explodes houses in flame, leaving total destruction in its wake. And very importantly, this kind of total destruction surrounded by green does not indicate high intensity wildfire exposure. So where we have a choice, if we define wildland urban fire as a home ignition problem, we can focus on making our homes ignition resistant during extreme wildfires and prevent ignitions. So preventing ignition and burning within this 5-foot zone next to building materials is a very critical element. But note in this photo, in this scene, that it was the pine needles that burned, not the shrubbery that was over the pine needles, because it's there unconsumed, scorched but unconsumed. And we see a similar scene of where this house ignited and was successfully protected with the same kind of non-combusted, non-consumed shrubs with the pine needles carrying the fire and igniting from lofted burning embers. So we need to create a non-ignition zone within 5 feet of a home and its flammable attachments to prevent this kind of damage and potential total destruction.
It's important to understand that in fire adaptive communities, the public understands certain components. They understand that there's a role that fire will play on the surrounding landscape. They understand that fire authorities cannot save all homes. They may not be able to. And lastly, that the community mitigation actions will reduce the unwanted impacts of wildfire. In a fire adaptive community, the public also is going to take action. They're going to support and enhance local fire protection capacity, what the firefighters can do, and then what they can do through Ready, Set, Go. They can prepare structures for wildfire via either being firewise or living with fire or similar principles. They need to take action to build fire-resistant materials and use low-risk landscapes. They also need to increase and maintain risk reduction efforts over time. This is the holistic approach that the community needs to take under a fire adaptive community model. The community takes a variety of integrative actions specific to their community. So as you can see, there are many different steps that a community can take, and not every community is going to take the same step.
All right, let's all come back on here. So I think one thing we heard from all of the first three presenters in that is that wildfires are inevitable. We've always had wildfire. We're always going to have wildfire. And if you have wildfire, once in a while, you're going to have extreme wildfire. But I think Jack Cohen, and for those who don't know who Jack is basically the godfather of modern wildfire science. He's very well respected all around the country. He's kind of a character. And I think it's just amazing, his statement that what we really have is a home ignition problem more than the wildfire problem. What do you guys think about that? You're on mute there, Jesse.
So I agree with Jack Cohen about that, the 0 to 5 foot zone, non-combustible zone. Like I said previously, it's where these embers will be landing around your structure. Are they going to be landing in the leaf litter that's, below your deck, or the accumulation of, the shredded redwood hair, gorilla hair, mulch, right up against your siding? These are all vulnerable spots in areas where, all it takes is one ember and a little bit of fire running up your siding, and you could have a bad situation fairly quickly. So maintaining that, always suggesting, succulents or, some kind of rock landscaping around there is always welcomed information for residents. So we always like to recommend those types of corrections in that area.
Great. Guys, anything else?
Yeah, I just think details really matter in the home ignition zone. And so where you can do, particularly with older homes, upgrades to Vulcan vents and other things, I think it's really wise to do so. Paying attention to not having any mulch within that zone. And then I also think they have these great new battery operated blowers. And after you have a wind event and there's a lot of tree debris next to your house, under your deck, under stairs that are adjacent to your house, take the time to clear all that stuff away.
Great. All good tips. As we pointed out, we know wildfire is inevitable. We know that our homes are vulnerable, but I think Jack made the point, we can take actions to harden, as we say, or protect our homes. And what we're really doing is we're adapting to the fact that we have fire. So the other day we were talking about this and was saying, gee, if I move to Lake Tahoe, I guess I better adapt to living in snow. So if you're going to live in Marin County, I think we need to adapt to living with fire. And I think that Chief Tyler from Nevada really did a good job of explaining, I wouldn't call it a new concept, but I think it's sort of the state of the art to be thinking about how do we adapt to these fires, because they're not going away. So within Southern Marin and Mill Valley, how are you guys doing? How is the public embracing the concept of fire adapted communities down there?
I don't think you're going to find much resistance against the concept, obviously, but it's that educational component, getting out to the community, making sure they're aware of it, and then making sure that they understand the benefits behind being aware of the fire risk and adapting to what's potential to come, from evacuation to home hardening to defensible space. It's all part of the game, and we're pushing that message out there as best we can.
I oftentimes hear at Fire Safe Marin here, well, the problem is out there in with the large land management agencies, open space, Marin Water District, Mountan. If only they clean it up, my home would be safe. But I think this makes the point very clearly that if you want your home to be safe, it's actions that you personally take that you're responsible for right near your home, many of which are not complicated. And we're certainly going to get into a lot more detail about some of those later on. What do you guys think? Can we save our homes?
Yeah, what matters most is what's closest to your home. And I think that's a shifting view.
Right. So there's hardening of homes, but there's also the concept of defensible space, still extremely important. They go hand in hand. So let's take a video that walks us through defensible space.
I want to illustrate it and bring it to the practical level for homeowners, give you some tips, some ideas of what you can look for and how you can make changes around your home. The first 5 feet is really illustrated right here. We're talking about the surface, the ground, the area right around the outside walls of your house. And we've got a lot of information on home hardening. We've got information on defensible space, landscaping, plant selection, all of these things tie together. They're all important. None of them stand alone. But I really think that we've learned that this zone 0, this first 5 feet, is the most critical place for you to pay attention to. And what I like is that it's also the easiest place for homeowners to take action. So recap here, most homes are going to ignite from embers. I'm going to show you a couple images that will help you understand what we're talking about when we refer to embers. This is video from a police officer's dashboard cam during the campfire in 2018. You can see the intensity, the number of embers. These are embers blowing across a road. Presumably there are homes in that vicinity. This is a fantastic illustration of what those embers can do, in this case in the forest or grasslands around a community. Again, this is the campfire. These are embers falling from the sky. And look back down when he swings the camera back down. Look what's happened in the few seconds since they turned the camera to the sky. These are spot fires that have ignited in fine grasses, fine vegetation fuels. And frankly, the same thing was happening in the front yards and around the surfaces around homes in that same vicinity. Here's another image, those embers, when they land on surfaces around a home, when they land on the combustible materials around the outside of the home and your bark mulch, for example, those materials where it will ignite, leaving green trees in the vicinity of this home. This is research that I think Steve was intimately involved in, but it's one of the best illustrations. This is a home that IBHS built in a laboratory setting. The right-hand side of the home is built with ignition-resistant materials. The left-hand side, not so much. The left-hand side used a bark mulch within 5 feet of the structure. The right-hand side used a decorative gravel mulch, and you can see the dramatic difference in the resistance to the embers that are being blown at this building. This is just, the best illustration you're gonna see of what we're talking about. This translates directly into the real world. This is a photograph. I apologize that it's blurry. It's the best copy I've been able to find of this picture, but this is a firefighter trying to protect a home during the Woolsey fire in 2018, burning on the same day that the campfire was burning in Northern California. This was in Southern California. And you can see exactly where the embers are accumulating, and you can see that it's the bark mulch around the exterior of this stucco home that has ignited, giving this firefighter a real run for his money. This is where we tie the home itself, the home hardening work that we want you all to do with zone 0 in this area around the exterior of the house. That's 6 inches closest to the ground. The separation between the ground, and in this case, you can even see leaf litter on the ground, and the combustible wood shingle siding. That's the critical 6 inches. Our goal is to keep the fire from spreading from the ground to the structure itself, and creating that separation. In this case, it's 6 inches of exposed foundation that separates the place where the embers will accumulate and the siding itself. Very important. This is an example image from a home in Marin County. This is a home, I apologize that I'm not backed up farther in the image, but what you see here is non-combustible siding. This is hardy shingles with an ember and fire resistant vent, a Vulcan brand vent, and a concrete pathway around the exterior of the house. You're gonna see more images from this in a second. So those things tie together that the structure, or separate the structure from zone 0. And as we've already covered, mulch, your choice in mulch within 5 feet of the structure is absolutely critical. This is an image of a gorilla hair, shredded redwood or shredded cedar type mulch, very commonly used. It's has its purpose in certain situations, but this material does not belong adjacent to your house. What we want to see for homeowners, and this is a simple change that you can make around your structure, we want to see you choose rock or gravel mulch. We want to see non-combustible, non-organic materials used as mulch immediately adjacent to the home. Wood chips or bark are out. They have their place in your yard more than 5 feet from your structure. Shredded redwood needs to be applied very carefully. It's the easiest to ignite. I always point out that that's what the Cub Scouts use to start their campfires. So you want to be very judicious with its use around your home if you live in the wildland-urban interface. Here's an image. This is from the Tubbs fire in Santa Rosa in 2017. This is a home, bark mulch. You can see one of the homes is actually burning in the background, the other is destroyed, and you can see how easily the bark mulch around the outside of the house has ignited. We're talking myth busting tonight, defensible space. That vegetation absolutely needs to go. There's no doubt about it. That's a poor choice in vegetation, but that's not all that defensible space is. The choice in vegetation is one small aspect of creating defensible space. Defensible space is not just about the plants. It's about the design. It's about the way you maintain that landscape. It's about the features that you build into your landscape, the permanent features, not just the plants. This is a great photograph just 2 years ago at the Kincaid fire in Sonoma County. showing very clearly how a landscaping feature, in this case a retaining wall, is helping direct heat away from the house. We hear from people all the time that defensible space, creating defensible space, improving their landscaping is gonna ruin their landscaping. They don't want to see the change in their landscaping. One of the best examples we've seen of a transformation in a yard. Here's the before photo. Here's the after photo. Same photo, same angle. The issues that this homeowner were confronted with were an old wooden staircase that was attached to the house, several inches of bark mulch, a bamboo hedge towards the back of the house and along the side of the house, a dead tree in the yard, and frankly, some areas that weren't landscaped, weren't particularly attractive, which changed to this: attractive use of succulents, use of decorative gravel within 5 feet of the structure. Again, we're not asking anybody to clear all of the vegetation in their yard, but we want people to know that a defensible space, again, not just about the landscaping or the vegetation in your yard, the landscaping features, the other features, the combustible materials in your yard can have just as big an impact on whether your home's going to survive. In this case, a fence. We've talked at length about the importance of protecting fences, making sure that fences are not attached to your structure. This is a great example of a yard that has fantastic defensible space in most senses, but that fence carried the fire directly to the home. This is probably the big one, the mother of all myths. My neighbor's tree is an extreme fire hazard. I have an inbox full of messages that say just that. People write to us, they call us, they're concerned about their neighbor's tree, oftentimes concerned about their own trees. We want people to look down, not necessarily up, when they're thinking about their defensible space. This is a photograph of the Scripps Ranch community in Southern California. This is a neighborhood that was surrounded by eucalyptus trees. Every home had trees in their side yard, their front yard, and their backyard, and every tree survived. None of the homes survived. This gets to the point we make often, that your homes are most vulnerable to embers. The defensible space is not harmful to the environment, although there is a myth floating around that creating defensible space creates harm to animals, plants, insects, and the landscape. This is not the case. You can have a healthy native landscape that's lush, well-maintained, and fire resilient. Myth: defensible space means cutting down trees. This is not the case. Again, we're not talking about the trees when we talk about defensible space, at least not the canopies of them. We want you to look towards the ground. We want you to look at the space around those trees. We want you to maintain a healthy natural forest around your property. This is a community that was losing their native oak woodlands to invasive species like French broom, Scotch broom, and acacia. By restoring the meadow that normally had surrounded these oak trees, they're restoring the health of the native oak forest, and they're improving their fire resiliency. The myth is defensible space means my house fend itself. The defensible and defensible space refers to firefighters. Defensible space as a concept goes back decades, and it really goes back to creating a space that's safe for firefighters to operate. It creates a space around a home where firefighters can protect the home, the firefighters do the defending, and the defensible space makes it safe for them to do that. In California, there are a variety of laws and codes and ordinances that address defensible space, and they address the defensible space around your home in using this theory of zones. Zone 0 to 5 feet, is going to be addressed by a new law, a change to California Public Resources Code that'll come into effect starting this year and be phased in over the next 3 years. And that's going to address a number of items that we know now are extremely important to the survival of your home, the combustibles within 5 feet of your walls. Zone 1, 5 feet to 30 feet, is a space where the CAL FIRE and the state law addresses it directly as the lean, clean, and green zone. This is an area where we want to see no dead vegetation at all. Grasses must be cut to 3 inches or less. Trees need to be limbed up 6 feet from the ground or a third the height of the tree. And we want to see spacing put between shrubs and plants. From 30 to 100 feet, the law requires that you provide basic maintenance, not removal of trees, removal of dead vegetation only. You don't necessarily, under the law, need to cut your dry grasses from 30 to 100 feet, although we strongly recommend that. When we look at this in relation to how homes actually ignite, I'm going to close with this. It's a reminder that 60 to 90% of homes lost during wildfires ignite from the embers that land on them or within 5 feet of them. There's nothing in the current law that addresses this issue. So when we talk about defensible space, when we talk about defensible space as a law, when we look at it as a law enforcement issue, we're really focusing on 10% of the homes that are lost during wildfires. But it's important to note that 100% of the homes that don't have defensible space are vulnerable during a wildfire.
Okay, we're back on again here. Once again, Todd began there talking about zone zero, sort of a new concept, first 5 feet or so around the home. I know a few years ago in Mill Valley, if not Mill Valley and Southern Marin, I know you were proposing an ordinance which was very focused on that area because that is so important to take care of. And then Todd was talking about the fact that there's going to be state legislation affecting what can be done in that area. What's the current status of things in Southern Marin and Mill Valley in terms of that close-in area to the home?
So I can speak for Mill Valley in that this was a very hot button issue for our community, that 3 to 5 foot zone. And so the city went ahead once they realized that the state was going to come up with legislation to address that. They dropped that from our ordinance, but we did move forward with outlawing bamboo, juniper, cypress, and acacia, thuja, and broom species, from lots in Mill Valley. And so we're going to have a year of education to address that, and then we'll move into further education and code enforcement. Great.
Well, I think it's great that you're ahead of the curve on that. You can see that's obviously the major takeaway for everybody. Embers, 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 because embers is what does the thing. They fall into that zone there. And if you have flammable materials in there, we're going to have a problem. Does that mean that the zone, in order for it to be safe, has to be bare earth or solid rock?
So not necessarily on that first 5 foot zone. But what we're looking at is that it is, hardscaped to a certain fashion. Southern Marin is not in the same boat as Mill Valley as far as we have not established that specific code language, but we are eagerly anticipating this new rollout from the state so we can start kind of adapting our take on defensible space a little bit more focused on that first 5 feet, because we know and understand how crucial it is to maintain that area.
Right. Well, I think that you could see from presentations like tonight, particularly seeing the video of it, hopefully everybody will understand the reasons that we're asking people to make these changes. I really like Todd's sort of theme of myth busting. You're going to see a lot more of that in our monthly webinars from Fire Safe Marin. And he mentioned what I also agree is the granddaddy of all the myths, which is my house is vulnerable because of my neighbor's tree or the open space tree. You guys ever hear anything like that from folks in your community?
Yeah, actually, when we were collaborating before this, that was basically the number one myth we were thinking about. Obviously, there's quite a few. Todd's going to have his hands full trying to cover that whole series. That could be going for a number of years, but that's why education is so important, is because there's a lot of myths out there. There's a lot of misconceptions. He touched on some very, very important ones, both controversial and very obvious. People see trees and they feel like they're going to threaten their homes, but it's not always necessarily the case. There is the rare occasion that the tree might need to be, manipulated in some sort to provide a more protective, like buffer zone from the structure. But typically, the way he says, look down instead of up, that's a very good point. Focus on what's collecting on the ground. Look where that leaf litter is going. Don't look at, where it's coming from as much.
Yeah, that's great advice. Anybody else? Jesse?
Yeah, so when I do home assessments, this is a one-on-one experience with the the homeowner and what they can do to address vegetation around the property. And I get frequently asked, this tree is a fire hazard, it needs to be removed. But, kind of like how Todd Lando touched on the subject, trees aren't necessarily a bad thing. We actually promote forest health, but what's around the tree? How low are the branches? Is there dead material inside the tree? How close are the branches to the structure? So there's actually ways to kind of reduce the risk in the tree itself by reducing the ladder fuels, so cleaning up below the tree, lifting up branches 6 feet or a third for a taller tree, and then taking a look inside. Is the canopy nice and open? Can you see through it? Is there dead material inside of it? So these are all ways to kind of reduce the risk of fire igniting the tree.
So a lot of talk about the vegetation, but I think we saw in Mark's glass fire walkthrough, and we saw from Todd, mulch is a huge contributing factor. So what's the story with mulch? Good, bad?
So I think mulch can be good, it keeps the moisture in the soil. But things that you really want to make sure, as we've already talked about and Todd well addressed, is keeping it away from the house. I also think keeping it away from wooden fences that may be attached to your house or outdoor sheds or things like that, that it needs to be thought about, where you're going to put it and if it's something that's going to contribute. And then the type of mulch is also very important, where I would stay away from gorilla hair and the redwood mulch, and cedar chips are a better type of mulch and much less combustible.
Yeah, I thought it was interesting in the glass fire walkthrough that two mulches of similar size and maybe somewhat similar composition, one of them just really took off and one didn't. So it's something you really need to pay attention to when you're using mulch. And just as you say, mulches have their place, they're important, they're a valuable tool in the garden, but you really do have to be careful with them when you're up close. You got to keep that in mind. So your defensible space program, how is that working? How do you do assessments? Can people just call up and somebody comes out and takes a look, or what's happening?
So both between Mill Valley and Southern Marin, we've kind of merged our programs to be very similar, and we offer a wide variety, mostly because we're trying to achieve a couple different things. Obviously, education is huge. We found that, a significant amount of compliance can be gained from that education or just the information provided. But then on top of that, we are starting moving through the citation process to gain compliance. So all of our inspection forms that we provide are focused on kind of modeling what the state's done in the past with their inspection forms, and built out so that we can continue on, if need be, a citation process, but really focusing on that educational component to bring those residents and homeowners into kind of light of what's required on their property in each one of those zones. So it's all broken into zones. Obviously, that form will probably have to be updated as the state rolls out new information to include Zone 0, but that's the goal. And we do offer home assessments where at any time voluntary, we can go out and do that more of an assessment versus an inspection, where it's purely educational. It's kind of getting in front of the curve, and then we can really give them that tailored approach. And that's where you get much more of that home hardening aspect in line with the defensible space, whereas the inspections are really focused on defensible space only.
So can a resident call the fire department and schedule an inspection?
Absolutely.
Yeah, great. Yeah. And other than that, there's additional inspections that are by neighborhood, or how's that all work?
Yeah. We assign all our streets out to engine companies as well as inspectors. So, kind of a divide and conquer, all hands on deck type of approach. I always say, it's like an apple. You can't eat it all in one bite, but if you got a lot of people you can work on and get it all taken care of. So we're slowly chipping away through it all, really getting out there. We've got programs that are integrated, like the chipper program, our paved road fuel reduction. There's a lot of different stuff going on, thanks to Jesse and Mike St. John and other individuals, to really comprehensively, attack this problem from every angle.
So chipping away and chipper brings me to another point. That's great. So our chipper program has started. And for those who don't know, it's very easy to sign up for it. It's chipperday.com/Marin. Put in your address, you'll get scheduled. We're visiting basically every neighborhood in Marin twice during the year, once over the next couple of months, take a little break and then back in late August and into September and early October in there. So really encourage you to take advantage of that program. Chipping has been going on for a long time in Mill Valley, and Southern Marin, which is great. But we would like you to take advantage of this program. Makes good sense. Then they can apply some of their funds to other projects that they want to get done down there. Is there anything else you're doing chipping wise besides the sort of MWPA funded? I need to put that out there. Fire Safe Marin chipping program. Jesse?
Yeah, so you kind of touch bases on it. Southern Marin and Mill Valley has actually been offering residents in our district a chipper program. We offer 2 services: a chipper request, which requires 3 or more homes to participate. They can clear, vegetation around their home. Some things we cannot take is leaf litter, grasses, bamboo, or ivy, but we can take a lot of other stuff, and we can take branches up into, I believe, 6 inches in diameter. And what this does is really helps the resident cut costs on redoing all this work around their homes, because when you consider doing vegetation management around your property, it definitely adds up. And this is just a way to help assist residents in the community. And another service we offer is the chipper week. So we'll schedule once a month a chipper to go down 8 to 10 streets in different areas throughout the district. And they'll be notified 2 weeks in advance, 3 weeks in advance, that this chipper service will be coming through their neighborhood. And so we definitely encourage residents to keep an eye out for the mailer that's sent out prior to this service.
Great. Very good. Okay, well, we mentioned Marin Wildfire Prevention Authority, which is funding the large chipper program. So let's take a minute and hear from Bruce Goines, who's the president of the MWPA board, and Mark Brown, who we've already heard from earlier, the executive officer.
Hi, my name is Bruce Goines. I'm honored to be serving as the president of the Marin Wildfire Prevention Authority. I came here with 45 years as a wildland firefighter and a forester, and managing statewide programs to help communities reduce their wildfire risk. Here in Marin, we're in a very special place. We have the Marin Wildfire Prevention Authority, which is a 10-year initiative, and all of our tax dollars are being invested back into the community to help reduce the risk of the inevitable wildfire. I want to just give you a little history, very brief, as to why the Marin Wildfire Prevention Authority was created. I think we all know the fires, catastrophic fires that have occurred all around us, to the north, to the east, to the south. Particularly last year was particularly bad. Your County Board of Supervisors had some vision after the Tubbs fire, which resulted in catastrophic events for Santa Rosa and Coffee Park. Your Board of Supervisors commissioned a group of firemen, law enforcement officials, city managers, and county administrators to take a look at what happened up in the North Bay, and what can we learn from that? What can we do to reduce the risk of something like that occurring here in Marin County? So they put together a team who produced a report. It's called the 2017 Lessons Learned Report, which you can find on the MWPA website if you're interested. But the bottom line was, it said that we needed to coalesce to bring all the resources together, all the fire agencies together, all the cities together, and coalesce and figure out and take an aggressive program to reduce our risks. Secondly, the next year, the county supervisors, again, with that report, the 2019 civil grand jury took up this topic. And the civil grand jury affirmed the 2017 lessons report. And in essence, they said, we need to take this one step further. We need to develop a reliable funding source, and we need for all of our fire agencies to coalesce under a joint powers authority. Then came in 2020 Measure C, and there are a handful of people in the room that you're in who were integral to Measure C coming up to the ballot. Morning, noon, and night, they talked with fire districts, city managers, and in essence, Measure C was passed in 2020. It was one of 4 tax initiatives, the only one that passed. And now we have a 10-year opportunity, $20 million a year, $200 million, which we expect to match through matching funds. But here we are, $20 million a year. The opportunity, 60% of these funds are for vegetation management and clearing, preparing evacuation routes, fire detection and public education. 20% is for defensible space evaluations, and 20% is for local mitigation projects. It's a phenomenal opportunity. This is the opportunity for you, the citizen. I believe your County Board of Supervisors has done their work. I think the fire chiefs are doing their work, and city managers. And this is the time for you, the public, to basically take responsibility and address the hazards and the risks and potentially reduce the potential consequences of a very catastrophic event. So thanks very much.
Hi, my name is Mark Brown, and I have the privilege of serving as the Executive Officer for the Marin Wildfire Prevention Authority. That's after 30 years of serving with the Marin County Fire Department and retiring as the Deputy Fire Chief. At the MWPA, our current focus is home hardening, because what we've learned during catastrophic fires and urban conflagrations is that it's the homes that turn into the primary carrier of fire. And if we can eliminate homes from catching on fire, we can start decreasing the catastrophic nature of these fires. So we want our homes to be hardened so they don't ignite. The next step is that we want a 5-foot non-combustible zone that surrounds our homes so that when embers land around our home, there's nothing to catch them on fire and then catch the house on fire. And then we want to look at smart firescape landscaping to create defensible space. We're not asking people to remove their vegetation. We're asking them to look at how they arrange their vegetation, both horizontally and vertically. We want an ember to land, preferably self-extinguish. But if it doesn't self-extinguish, we want whatever it catches on fire doesn't spread to something else and it just stays within that area. And then finally, we are focused on an evacuation route clearing. There's just so much work that needs to be done. We are so far behind in our vegetation management at a countywide level. Our primary goal is to get people out safely. So we are focusing hard on our evacuation route clearing. To that end, we've purchased the Zone Haven evacuation management platform so we can streamline our evacuation systems. They are not replacing anything that we have currently in place. They aren't replacing, Zone Haven will not replace our notification systems. It will not replace law enforcement or fire going door to door, knocking on your door, telling you it's time to leave. But what it does, it gives us more information so that we can plan better prior to an emergency and during an emergency so we can get people out safer. We are also conducting a study of our ingress and egress routes throughout the county. That way we can evaluate which routes need to be worked on and we can prioritize and get the routes that need the work the most done right away. Our current schedule of projects includes chipper days to support the homeowners with their defensible space work. Low-income defensible space grants, so those who don't have the financial resources to do the work around their home can tap into those grants in order to make their home safe. Along with their home being safe, that makes the rest of the community safe. And then we are looking at creating home hardening matching grants. So residents that want to work on their home, make their homes hardened so they are less likely to ignite, we will match what they are spending in order for them to improve their homes. We discussed the evacuation route clearing. We see that as one of our most important things that we'll be doing this year. And then we will be working on fuel reduction projects in and around our homes near the open space, the wildland-urban interface boundary. We want to create a space where a catastrophic fire could come into and then actually decrease in intensity as it enters into our homes. And we're going to do that with shaded fuel breaks along that wildland-urban interface boundary. And then you're participating in one of our primary tools right now, and that is public education. And what we found is the more the public understands about wildfire and what they can do and what their responsibility is for wildland fire, the safer our communities will be. And thank you for attending. Thank you for being a part of the solution. And thank you for helping decrease the risk to wildfire in Marin.
All right, we heard from Bruce and Mark there. Really tune into the work that the Marin Wildfire Prevention Authority is doing. It really is amazing the things that they're getting accomplished over there and creating, probably most important, a real spirit of cooperation throughout the county where all the different agencies are working together collectively. So the next meeting that they're having of the board is actually tomorrow. You might want to tune into that because they're going to preview a lot of the projects that will be accomplished over the next year, and it's over 100 of them. So a lot of work being done over there. Is the MWPA proving helpful to you in Southern Marin and Mill Valley? Jesse?
So the MWPA, has already allowed us to enhance our chipper program, providing more chipper service to our residents, and allow us to look at large-scale projects strategically located on the outskirts of our district. So we're looking at some large-scale fuel reduction projects for homes that are adjacent to open space or federal land. And the MWPA is allowing us to do those types of projects.
Great. I think some help with the DSpace program too?
Yes. Marshall, do you want to touch on that?
Yeah, well, so I can speak in volumes compared to what we had prior to the MWPA here, plus my experience when I worked for another agency in the county and our limited resources for both funding on wide-scale fuel breaks, fuel reduction programs, chipper programs, and defensible space. The MWPA is definitely providing that additional revenue and assets to get these inspectors trained up, and get them out in the field, because that's really what's required in order to go house to house and be able to provide this education is going to be those inspectors. And that's kind of what MWPA is providing, is those additional resources that are absolutely needed.
Yeah, it's the classic taxpayer dollars at work, very visible. You can see what your taxes are getting for you. It's not a lot of admin, it's a lot of work in the field. Okay, that being said, home hardening, we've touched on that several times. Let's take a look at the home hardening video.
You need to harden your home. That's why you're here tonight. I'll just point out that the video that's playing there in the background, that's a home in Napa County, Oakville. It's one of the highest homes anywhere in Napa County. It was impacted by this fire, the one that you see there, in October of 2016. This was about a 50-acre fire that started on the roadside and burned directly up to the house, impacted the house. The house escaped this fire undamaged. There was no insurance claim on this property besides a solar panel array that was down the hill in the bushes. The house itself undamaged. 1 year later, almost to the day the Nuns fire started, it was one of the North Bay fires. It started overnight, burned 50,000 acres, and on day 3 of the fire, it impacted this house directly from the other side. The side that you don't see burning here burned 1 year later. The house again escaped undamaged. The reasons for that are the way the house was designed, the materials that were used to build the house, and careful thought to building a fire-resistant structure.
The best place to start when talking about your ignition zones is the actual home and structure itself. And that's where the term home hardening comes in. Home hardening refers to the maintenance of your structure and the upkeep, as well as the building materials that you've applied to your home.
One of the most interesting concepts that have come out of the studies that have been done on the fires, the large fires that have happened throughout the United States over the past couple years, is this idea that it's not the flame front that actually destroys your house. It's the flying ember storm that will do that damage. So hardening your home actually becomes a very, very important part of this whole wildfire preparedness plan. When it comes to home hardening, there's two aspects or two ways to look at it. The first is the actual construction of the building itself, and when we look at that side, we see things such as the materials that the roof is made of, the material that your siding is made of, what is actually touching the ground, and we also look at the soffits of the house, for example. Are they closed in or are they open? And then the other aspect that we look at is maintenance. So when we talk about maintenance, we're talking about things like, what are you storing under your deck? What do you have up in your gutters? Do you have leaves that have fallen in there that need to be taken care of? Do you need to clean off your roof? If you have a log cabin, are all the holes filled in with putty? The house behind me has some really great examples of home hardening from the construction standpoint. Right next to the ground, there's nothing that's combustible there. The rock goes clear down to the ground, and for the first several feet coming up, there's no way for a fire on the ground to get into the house. The siding above the rock is limited combustible. That means that it does have the ability to burn, but it's treated with a substance that will prevent it from actually sustaining fire. A lot of the times people like to have a wood siding on their house, and that's okay as long as it's installed correctly and you are using the correct materials. So if you look at the soffits in this house, they're boxed in. And what that does is it protects those areas from collecting any of these flying embers that happen to come along during a wildfire event. And then especially nice on this house is the metal and asphalt shingle roof. This house has a combined, a combo style covering, which is just fine. Both of them are very good at keeping those embers from having a place where a fire can start. Having a redwood deck or a deck that's made of combustible materials is not the end of the world. If you do have that type of deck, you certainly don't need to tear it out. You just need to do a little bit of maintenance on it. Make sure it's treated with a non-combustible sealant. From a home hardening aspect, maintenance is probably the most important thing you can do. No matter what your house is made out of, no matter what material you have on the side of your house, what material your deck is made out of, or what material you have on the roof, that has to be maintained. If you look around your house and you find places where the wind blows leaves, those are the same places where embers are going to come in a firestorm. And those are the same places where those embers will sit there and smolder until the conditions are just right for them to ignite whatever they've landed in. Another large risk for your house is openings. Any opening that goes into your attic, any vents in your soffits or vents even in your gables or on the side of your house, they have the potential of collecting flying embers. Back in the day, we used to put 1/4 inch mesh on these openings to keep things from getting in. The latest science from the large fires that we've had within the United States over the past couple years has shown us that 1/4 inch mesh is not tight enough.
I am inspired by the Park City Fire Department, and I'm going to harden my home. I'm going to change my attic vents, and I'm going to put screening underneath my decks. And I'm going to teach you how to do it. Let's go. First thing you need to know is I am not a handyman, but I'm going to go for this because I need to make my house more safe. Remove that screen. I can do it. You can do it. Embers out. Measure it first. That is a 2-inch opening, and there is a stock 2-inch vent for you at the hardware store. You're going to use those pliers to pull that wire. You're going to use that hammer to tap in the new vent, and you're going to use that sandpaper to clear out paint and gunk so that vent slides in easily. They are a little fragile. Don't hit them too hard. There's the vents you have to choose from. I chose those Ember vents with 16-inch screen on the backside. Vulcan vents have a different system, and I'll show you. There's the ones I got, 44 of them for around my house, about $1.50 each. This is the Vulcan vent. It's got louvers that keep out the embers, lots of teeny louvers. And on the other side is a honeycomb that will melt if it is exposed to high heat. These are double the price of the vents I went with, so I went on a budget. But I did sand them in carefully, and I worked hard to get them in, and I sanded, and I sanded, and I sanded to get them in. And once you've sanded enough, they slide right in. If you do not sand enough, they will bend and bend. Bend and bend. Here we are. Also, as you make your way around your house, it's a good idea to get some caulk and just fill in holes, any kind of crack or groove that you think maybe embers could embed in, and start a smoldering fire. It's thorough, it's good, and now you're done. Look at those vents. The louvers are pointed down. They're in. It's time for some more paint and sanding and make my house more beautiful. But before I do that, I want to work on my low deck out back. It needs some love too. I went and got some screening materials. I got a roll of 1/8-inch stainless steel metal mesh. Easy for me to say. And then I went to my crusty deck and I turned it a little less crusty. I cleaned it up and I got ready to apply the mesh. I measured down and I cut extra. Mesh is malleable. I measured long. It can be formed to the space, but if it's too small, you can't fit it in. And here's some tools I used. First, I used that grinder. Now, everybody doesn't have a grinder. You can also use some tin snips, and I'll show you what that looks a little later. As I grinded, it was a little wild and fast, and sparks were flying. Not recommended for the dry season. This is a winter project, winter, spring. You don't want to do it during fire season. These are the tin snips that worked really well. It cut like butter and it was under control. I probably will use these from the future. And here we are underneath. I tacked it up with the staples and just made sure it all fit. And then I came back with my screw gun and made sure it was tight up against the wood. We don't want embers to slip through. Really what you're doing is you're making sure that no leaf matter or sticks or twigs will blow in the during our fog season when the wind howls and would push in unwanted material. And then if you happen to have an embers storm, then that material could kindle and catch this deck. And then I put some rock down even to make sure it would stay down and it wouldn't be up against the dirt and it wouldn't rot as quickly. And this is what it looks like when it's done. It's ready for some more hardscaping. I did put some weed cloth down so the weeds wouldn't come up again. And you can do this as well. Good job, people. You can do it. You know what the steps take. And thank you for making Marin a little bit more fire safe.
All right, we're back again here. At Fire Safe Marin, we had a little bit of fun, a little bit of controversy putting together those videos. The first controversy was using the house that's in Park City there. Believe it or not, it's actually pretty hard to find homes in Marin that are as pristine and well protected as that home is. Most of our homes were built quite a while ago. So that home we picked because it just shows so clearly the features that we're always talking about in there. And if you look at that home, it's in the middle of a forest, which has fir and pine trees and whatnot, which are in many ways more vulnerable than a lot of what we're surrounding with. And I think that home is going to do very well if there is a wildfire there. So we do want to thank the Park City guys for letting us use that. And then we had a little bit of fun coming up with the video of Aaron, who is with Fire Safe Marin, doing a little bit of do-it-yourself stuff, because that brings up probably the things that we deal with all the time out there. And I'll put it to one of you guys who's out there in the field. What are the barriers that are preventing people from actually taking action to make their home safer?
Well, one thing I like about that DIY section is that he broke it down, made it very simple, highlighted where it was complex and where it wasn't, and was very honest about it. And that's one of the big things out there with the public is when you're going to these homes, they either don't have the time or, alternatively, they don't have the money to tackle some of these challenges. And frankly, sometimes they just don't know where to start. They don't understand. They don't understand what's required of them, and it almost seems overwhelming. So that's this one-on-one approach to these home assessments, even providing the checklist of that fire perspective of what's required on these defensible space inspections. We can start spelling it out specifically for them, and then they can gauge us in order to ask where they can improve on their home and what they can do. So whether it's home hardening or vegetation, fuels reduction around the house, either way, that education component is paramount.
Does anybody have a good success story where somebody took all this to heart and went out there, went to town and really made some great improvements?
I just want to say that we work with residents and it is a slow process. We have a lot of vegetation around these homes. And when I do these home assessments, I work with the residents, come up with a game plan. Typically, we like to focus more or less around the house itself. Making sure they have, adequate screen size, 1/8, 1/16. Checking out void spots, where leaf litter can kind of build up underneath your deck. So making sure we kind of screen those off. making sure we have vertical and horizontal spacing. Really want to touch bases with all these things that go hand in hand, which could hopefully increase the chance of the house surviving a wildfire. So that's what I got.
I have seen some people make very substantial changes to their landscape and call me back and say, "Hey, I just want you to show you guys what I've done." Just people that took out all their juniper and replaced it with succulents and rock. But I've seen a number of people make a lot of substantial changes, and there's certainly some reluctance at first because they just didn't understand. But I think even in the last 12 to 18 months, a lot of people have come around.
That's good news. We like to hear that. If you think about it, it sort of begins with, I didn't really know I had a problem. And then, well, an assessment was done. Now I realize I have some things to work on. And well, it seems like it's a little bit daunting, but if we take these one step at a time, it could be tough to try to fix everything day one, but come up with a plan, do it over a few years. And then there's a couple things coming down the road if you're really in financial need, if that's really the problem. And I think pay attention to what's happening with the Marin Wildfire Prevention Authority. I think some grant programs are going to start being available to people. You will need to demonstrate economic need and other things like that, but there's definitely going to be some help out there. We really want to encourage people to take these steps. What you're going to see from Fire Safe Marin and our future webinars beginning towards the end of the summer is a real focus on what are the barriers and how do we solve them. And I wouldn't say necessarily the exact same type of do-it-yourself thing, but what are the simple, inexpensive things that you can do right now that'll already begin to make your home safer? And there's a lot more of that than people realize out there. So I think that's a real plus. One of the things I mentioned about the Park City home is that it's kind of brand new, so you can see all these features that are in it. And unfortunately, a lot of Marin was built before some of those codes that are out there that we have now. What do you see in Southern Marin and Mill Valley as sort of the typical issues that people need to deal with that are maybe a little bit unique to your area down there, whether it be weather, when the houses are built, or their situation? What's special there?
Well, in Mill Valley, we have a lot of narrow access roads, as one aspect, but more related to, our yards is people love their privacy screens in Mill Valley. So we actually have a substantial amount of bamboo and other types of flammable privacy screens that people have put up. We have an abundance of acacia, which is really difficult to get rid of, along with bamboo. So I think, long-term, we can cut it out, but we need to also do education on how to prevent it from coming back.
Yeah, Southern Marin obviously is much more vast than just Mill Valley itself. We have a lot of different styles of communities, hillside communities for the most part, but we have those narrow access roads like Mill Valley does in Sausalito. The houses are practically built on top of each other. So everyone tries to get that, bayside view, which just increases with the ability to place a home on the lot in a way where that privacy screen isn't able to get around it. It's kind of almost required and expected. So those bamboo hedges really start to come up and become an issue. And so finding that alternative landscaping method is huge. I don't know if you guys can still hear me, but hopefully my computer didn't freeze. But ultimately, yeah, it's relatively diverse here in the district from each area, and each faces their own challenge.
Well, that's great. I think you kind of touch on this, but when you're out there and you do the assessments, we always talk about vegetation and T-space and whatnot, but are you also looking at the home itself to see if there's obvious vulnerabilities that you can point out to the resident or homeowner?
Yeah, of course. When we do our assessments, first and foremost, we want to see what's around the structure with vegetation, making sure there's horizontal and vertical spacing, making sure we don't have a continuous amount of fuel. But during these assessments, we touch bases on some budget-friendly items they can do to harden their home, and the vents, reducing the screen size of the soffit vents, gable vents, and basement vents around their structures, which is a low-cost item to do. which definitely reduces embers from entering your structure in your home. So those are kind of the go-to things homeowners can do.
Good. Well, embers, embers, embers. That's sort of the theme,
Yep,
right?
right.
All right. So let's talk about how communities can prepare, how neighbors can help each other. All right.
Hello. Hi. My name is Nancy. I'm the leader of the local Firewise site for the neighborhood. Okay. And we're all about helping each other fire harden our homes and our gardens.
Oh, well, I could sure use help. I mean, I don't know what you can do, but it's such a mess down there.
Oh, that would be wonderful, because we are looking to come together and help out with some gardens that need some extra love and care. And is that something that we could do?
That would be fantastic.
Oh, wonderful.
Yeah. When do you do that?
Well, we try to do it every Saturday or every other Saturday, or
Okay.
just when people can make it, and some people might be able to show up on Saturday, and I think we can pull it together. Would that be good?
That would be fantastic.
Okay, great.
Yes.
So 10 o'clock on Saturday?
Wonderful, yeah. I'll see you there.
Great. Okay, thanks. Bye.
Bye-bye.
Hey, Ronan, I think Finn's gonna need a walk. Can you take him?
Oh, yeah. Hey, guys, this is an alert from Alert Marin. There's a fire in the area. The embers shower could happen anytime with these high winds. We need to go.
Okay, let's get going. It's a red flag day, so I've got everything right there inside the door. We've got the to-go bag. I think I've got my glasses. I've got medicine, ID. You two get the puppy in the kennel and load him in the car.
Let's make sure Miss Benson, our neighbor, also has gotten the alert and that she's aware that we have to get going.
Great. Let's get our masks. Get long sleeve shirts, hats. Let's get going.
Hey, Miss Benson, we just got an alert from Alert Marin. There's a fire in the area, and
Where?
we're going to get some ember showers. It's right up on the hill.
Oh, my
It's
God.
time to go. Can you get your important papers
Yes.
and your medicines or anything else you need?
I don't have a car.
You could fit in with us. Why don't you come with us then?
Okay. I'll be ready in a few minutes.
All right, sounds
okay.
good.
You want me to get him?
Welcome to Fire Safe Marin's webinar series.
Our fire season has increased by about 75 days a year.
This is how you will receive your emergency notifications.
We continued to go away from the fire, and at this point we started realizing it was around us. We're seeing flames.
We at Fire Safe Marin are excited to be sponsoring a chipper event in your neighborhood. This video shares some simple guidelines for you to prepare your chipper pile to ensure that it will be picked up.
Wildfires have always been a part of California, but recently we've had more fires and they've been more destructive than ever before. That's why we've created this program for you. It's called Ready, Set, Go. When we think of defensible space, it's helpful to imagine different zones, depending on the distance from the building we want to protect. Today, we're only going to talk about the most important of the defensible space zones. Studies have shown that 60 to 90% of homes destroyed in wildfires are ignited by tiny embers.
Hi, I'm Faye Mark from the University of California Marin Master Gardeners. We're often asked the question, what are the safest plants? Truth is, all plants burn. When it comes to fire-smart landscaping, it's much more important to consider where a plant is situated and how it is maintained than to assume some plants are better than others.
In the long run, loss of pollinators could create a shift in vegetation with plant reproduction favored by wind pollination. Wind-pollinated species include grasses and pine trees, which tend to be more fire-prone. Fire safety can be both beautiful and support biodiversity. We can have it all with careful planning.
How does working as a community help improve fire safety?
You can't do everything. You can work on your own property and do everything you need, vegetation management, house hardening, and then if your neighbors don't know what to do or are unaware of the whole process, you're still vulnerable. So when you work together as a neighborhood, You're able to learn how to do it and what to do, and everybody becomes jointly embarked on the same project. I also noticed a very surprising element about forming a Firewise community, and that is that even people who aren't actively members of our group, they might be in a nearby neighborhood or even in our neighborhood but not participating. Once they see us start doing the work, it's a process of modeling. All of a sudden, without us saying anything, they're doing the work themselves. And areas that were completely overgrown are within a month or two suddenly getting clearer. And you can see that they're aware that this is an issue, and they're taking it on board and doing it on their own initiative. So that has been a very gratifying area for just seeing how people are responding to the whole neighborhood at work.
It is making sure that everybody gets the information that we want to get to them about a chipper day or a broom pull.
The hardest part is the initial outreach. If you have it on your mind you want to form a community and you haven't done this kind of work before, it can be a little intimidating to reach out. And I think that's the hardest step, is to reach out and find some like-minded neighbors who are also worried about it. The way we did it was we simply put a notice on next door saying, "Hello neighbor, are you concerned about wildfire in your neighborhood?" and suggested a meeting time. And the next step is, having got a few neighbors involved, is we did some door knocking. Obviously in the time of COVID, it's hard to do that. But you can leave information on people's doorknobs or doorsteps, and built our database. And that's really very important, because once you have your database, you have the people that you reach out to. They don't have to be the people who come to the meetings. They just are people who are interested in the topic. And then once we're all connected, we started the process, and it was very straightforward.
The Firewise community is a way of getting people to address a problem. So people looking at Paradise, looking at the Napa and Santa Rosa fires, were ready to say, yeah, it's possible we could have a fire here. Let's do something about it. And it's not onerous, and maybe if we work together we can figure out what to do best.
We've introduced you to what community preparedness looks like. Yet, we know it's quite another thing to embark on this endeavor in your own community. So, FireSafe Marin has created what we call the Universal Firewise Activities, or UFAs. These 7 activities will help you build a robust fire-adapted community. The first UFA is to develop a comprehensive contact list of residents. You can reach out to your neighbors on Nextdoor by posting an announcement inviting people to join your efforts. You can print out door hangers and place them on gates or under doormats. Once you get an initial interested group, host a social event. You can do this via Zoom and show one of FireSafe Marin's videos and have a Q&A after. Or, once it's safe, you can host a neighborhood block party and spend a few minutes letting people know things that they can do to make your community safer from wildfire and inviting them to join. One of the best ways, of course, is to reach out to the neighbors that you are already friendly with. Share your ideas. Surely they know other neighbors who may want to join efforts to make the neighborhood safer from the threat of wildfire. Holding regular meetings keeps the efforts rolling. Some communities do this monthly, others quarterly. It depends on what your community wants to do. You can hold meetings via Zoom to talk about concerns and activities. Try showing one of our 5-minute videos posted on our YouTube channel and have a discussion after. Of course, when it's safe, you can hold meetings in your home or on the patio. But I have to say, Zoom has been a bit easier. No need to tidy up or rush out the door. A key aspect of being a fire-adapted community is education. FireSafe Marin has several resources for you to pull from. Our website has a nationwide audience owing to its depth of information. There, you can find printable materials such as our evacuation checklist and homeowner's guide to wildfire preparedness. Over 75 videos and webinars can be found on our YouTube channel. Guest speakers include top fire scientists, veteran firefighters, and the latest information in the world of fire and wildland-urban interface. Don't forget to refer people to our Facebook page for quick updates. Fuel reduction can go a long way to make our neighborhood safer for members. Encouraging participation in free annual Chipper Day events is a good way to make some headway. You can email those on your contact list, distribute door hangers, post the event on Nextdoor and Facebook, and post flyers in community hotspots. Holding annual neighborhood walks to reassess your progress and to note areas that still need improvement is a good way to keep current. Are flammable juniper and Italian cypress disappearing? Do you need to increase efforts on a neglected aspect of home hardening? Celebrate your successes too. By holding an annual evacuation drill, you are encouraging people to prepare before it's time to go. Preparing a to-go kit, dressing for safety, getting your family and pets prepared, and knowing your evacuation route beforehand goes a long way towards a quick and safe evacuation with less anxiety. Start with our training presentation and follow one of the drills outlined in our evacuation template. Notify your local fire department of serious hazard through their wildfire mitigation specialists. Get to know these folks. They perform defensible space inspections and are your go-to people for hazards in your community. By using these UFAs, you'll be able to engage, educate, and activate your community to make your community safer from the dangers of wildfire.
All right, we're back again. Another sort of a fun thing that we did at Fire Safe Marin was create that first video. We call it the parable. It's kind of obvious neighbor helping neighbor, but that scenario where a neighbor went along and helped another neighbor who didn't have transportation to get out during wildfire is actually very commonplace. A lot of people have been saved in some of those North Bay fires. That's actually how they were saved. Neighbor helping neighbor doesn't necessarily mean that you're responsible for your neighbor, but some basic awareness out there, and you know that it's Mr. Smith or Mrs. Jones or whoever it is right there, a little helping hand like that just really goes a long ways. So neighbor helping neighbor, how do you think that concept goes over in Southern Marin Mill Valley?
So neighbor helping neighbor is certainly embraced throughout the district. It's a huge, it's big down here because you know, like you touch bases on, you know, you could have a neighbor down the street that, you know, may have a challenging time getting out in case of evacuation due to, you know, being elderly or disabled or some kind of situation. So I fully support neighbor helping neighbor, not only through getting to know your neighbors, but helping them out, clearing, you know, vegetation around their homes. You know, let's say you have one home in the neighborhood that has a lot of leaf litter or debris around their homes. You know, it would be good for residents to reach out to them, see if they need a hand. You know, they might not be able to do it themselves. So neighbor helping neighbor is a great outlook. And actually, I have an experience after the Tubbs fire. I made it a goal of mine to get to know the majority of neighbors on my block, and sure enough, there was a neighbor 4 houses down from me who was an elderly woman. She most likely would have a hard time evacuating, so I got her phone number. We were in contact. Thankfully, you know, we were fine. We were in the downtown area of Santa Rosa, but you know, just in case, it's always good to make sure everyone around you is able to get out and help them out as much as possible.
Jesse, that's a great story. Thanks for sharing that. That is really the whole concept of neighbor helping neighbor. I think Mill Valley was the first community in Marin to have a Firewise site. It's growing now. We have almost 80 of them, the most of any county in the United States. How's Firewise doing down there?
Well, I think Firewise, both in Mill Valley and Southern Marin, is doing very well. We continue to add new communities to our new areas to our Firewise communities. And I just passed along a community in Tam Valley as recently as last week that's ready to become a Firewise community to Jesse to interact and get started with.
Well, that's great. It is a very good program. We really support it very strongly here at Fire Safe Marin, monthly meetings and so forth. One of the things, though, that does come up sometimes is sometimes there's a struggle. There's some excitement. Let's become Firewise. You get started, you get assessment, and then it kind of falls off because sometimes people aren't really sure what to do. It seems overly complicated. So we developed those, what we call universal firewires activities, as things that should be simple for everybody to take on. You need to have contacts. You need to know who's in your community, just like Jesse described. Who's there? How do you outreach to them? You got to have some regular meetings. You do evacuation drills down there, so getting people to participate, that's important. Lots of chipper days there. Let's get out, let's get the yard cleaned up and so forth. Any experience that you have where you were able to, where a Firewise site was really able to step up and kind of make a real difference in where they're located?
There's numerous examples of that. Marin View Firewise site, I believe it's one of the first created Firewise sites in Marin County. They've done extensive amount of good work. We've worked with them closely over the years, helping them identify projects in areas where they can improve work on. We've also done work on TCSD owned parcels. A large project was recently completed in the area. Mike St. John took that role on with the Tam Valley Grant and really accomplished a lot of good things over there. And maybe he can kind of expand on that a little bit.
So when we do these projects, thanks, Jesse, there's a lot of stakeholders involved. And so we pulled together the neighborhood association from the TCSD, and we worked very closely with the National Park Service. And we did almost a mile and a half or so of fuel break on GGNRA property, National Park Service property that was within 150 feet of structures in the upper part of Marin View, as well as Forest Way in Tam Valley. And the neighbors were really happy to see this work occurring. And what we did was build a large shaded fuel break as kind of a buffer between the wildland and the community.
Well, these larger projects, we've been talking a lot about what individual homeowners need to do and de-space inspections and et cetera. But some of these larger projects really do protect communities. I know you, I think, made a number of submissions for new projects to MWPA. Any that you want to highlight that are coming up in the future?
We have several we put in for. One that I'm taking point on, and we're hoping for approval, is to create a shaded fuel break starting at the railroad grade that would kind of go up and around within 150 feet of structures, largely on open space property, but some city property along Blythedale Ridge and Warner Canyon. And we feel this project of thinning out the brush in many cases pretty dramatically, limbing up trees, will go a long way to provide a much better buffer and defensible space between these structures and the heavily vegetated areas on open space land.
Yeah. Can you explain to the audience what a shaded fuel break is?
That's a good point. And what we're trying to do is restore the forest how it was, as Todd Lando explained in a video that, and Mark Brown as well, that all the fire suppression we've done in the last 100 years, a lot of areas of Mount Tam have never had this much vegetation on it. We can't do prescribed fire this close to communities. So what we do is try to restore forest health by limbing up the trees, reducing a lot of the underbrush. We don't do a dozer break or strip the land of vegetation, but what we want to do is try to restore a healthy forest using more mechanical means. Also reduce a lot of the non-native vegetation, such as a lot of the brooms and other invasive species, and just create not only a fuel break, but also in many cases a better wildlife habitat and safer environment.
I think that's really well put. Honestly, the shaded fuel breaks are actually very attractive, very ecologically sound. They look good. Everything's taken care of there. I've actually seen them in action with some video where you see a pretty large fire coming towards them. When they get up there, the fire just dies out. They're very effective. They're really a good buffer for communities. If you have a really windy day and sparks are flying 2 miles ahead of events, well, they can even get ahead of a shaded fuel break sometime. But sometimes we lose sight of the fact that 99% of the wildfires we have are not extreme wildfires. And so actions like this will save a lot of homes, and will save a lot of smaller evacuations and whatnot. So it's very sound, and it really brings back the forest to what it looks like. I think anybody who's a Marin resident, if you haven't done it, go on the internet or go to your local library and look at the older pictures of Marin. 100 years ago, even with homes here, it didn't look anything like it does today. Not because there's more houses, but in those days, it was grasslands and oaks. And we have planted so many non-natives. They're all over the place. We have not thinned anything. We haven't allowed wildfire to take place for 100 years. We used to have elks that would graze. That's what kept down all the brush and whatnot. And it's just transformed in an unhealthy way the environment. So sometimes people say, well, if you don't touch it, you know, that's environmentally sound. That ship sailed 100 years ago. When we stopped allowing natural fire to take place, when we got rid of the grazers and browsers and whatnot, started planting stuff, the landscape started transforming. It is no longer a natural landscape. So efforts like this to put it back into the way it should be are really positive, both environmentally and sound practice for protecting us from wildfire. Good work. All right, our last video is personal preparedness. And it's great that we all work together, but there's no escaping this. There are certain things we just need to do, take responsibility for. So we got a video that will address some of that. All right.
In the following section, you will hear about personal and evacuation preparedness. Long before a wildfire strikes, all Marin residents need to take action to be ready. There are many simple things that you can do today. The best advice to help you remain safe during a wildfire is to evacuate early.
When we discuss wildfire preparedness, especially how it relates to evacuation, we like to break it down into 3 topics: ready, set, go. This is a national program that follows the ready, set, go mantra, and it's important. It works. It helps us keep organized. The ready is discussing preparedness, things you do in advance of a fire. Being set is the situational awareness that you need to have when a wildfire is burning in your neighborhood, but really anytime during fire season. And go refers to going early, making the decision to leave. When's it time to evacuate? What situational awareness is when we're referring to a wildfire. Understanding what weather can trigger wildfires, can trigger to especially the catastrophic wildfires, is so important.
Hello, I'm Captain Oscar Arenas with the Ross Valley Fire Department. You may have seen signs like this at the entrance of your neighborhood. These signs means that a red flag warning has been declared by the National Weather Service. When that happens, Marin County fire chiefs consult with each other to determine which areas of Marin are most at risk. The chiefs then issue an order for signs to be posted. During red flag warnings, extreme caution is urged for all residents because fires are more likely to ignite, and those that do are more likely to spread and be more difficult to control. Red flag warning conditions are typically related to wind events lasting at least 8 hours. During these events, vegetation is very dry, humidity is low, and no rain has occurred in the last 24 hours. Relative humidity and wind speed are the primary factors driving a red flag warning declaration. Red flag warnings are designated for a specific span of time. The warnings remain in effect until it expires, is canceled, or upgraded.
Situational awareness also has to do with how you get your alerts and warnings. You need to take steps in advance, like now, today, if you haven't already, to ensure that you're going to receive the electronic warnings that we send out. In Marin, we use Alert Marin, we use Nixle. We have options to send out things like the wireless emergency alerts, similar to the presidential alerts that ring every cell phone in a region. We use NOAA weather radios, but you've got to be registered for, and you've got to understand how you might receive alerts when a fire's threatening your community. Alert Marin, I mentioned, this is our primary emergency notification system in Marin County. Virtually every county in Northern California has a similar system. This is how you will receive your emergency notifications when an evacuation for a wildfire is necessary. This is the best tool we've got. It works well. Nixle is a service that's available to any government agency to send out informational notices. We'll oftentimes repeat messages that went out via Alert Marin on Nixle, but we can't target specific street addresses with Nixle. So Nixle, little more broad reach. Because of that, we use it for informational notices that should go out to the entire community rather than targeted messages. Social media, commonly used. It's a great source of information. Your fire department, sheriff's office is probably using social media like Twitter, Facebook, and Nextdoor to get information out. This is going to be lower level information. When we use these notification systems, the terminology that's distributed is really important. An evacuation order. This is the most important message you might receive. This means that you need to evacuate immediately. You're going to take care of your personal safety. An evacuation warning is the next level down. This is a notification that says that you do have some time to prepare. You've certainly got time to prepare yourself, your family, your pets. You also probably have some time to prepare your home. We in Marin County only use the evacuation warning if you have in the belief of the firefighters who are directing the fire, at least 2 hours to evacuate. Oftentimes it's much more. We want you to consider things like battery backups for your garage doors, especially, but also for your communication. For about $99, you can install a garage door battery backup that will open and shut your garage door. On the packaging for the one they have at Home Depot right now, it says it'll open the door about 50 times during a power outage. It also keeps the button lit up on the wall, makes it easier to find if you need to get out of your garage door at night. And really importantly, it lets you close your garage door behind you. This is important. When you leave, we want you to shut that door behind you to keep embers from blowing into your garage. A battery backup for your phone system can keep your phones ringing. These will run your phones for about 12 hours typically. We want you to be able to receive the phone calls from Alert Marin if the power were to go out overnight while you were asleep and you weren't aware. NOAA weather radios. You're going to hear a lot more about these weather alerting radios. It's what people in the Midwest use to be alerted when a tornado is nearby, and we're going to be using these more and more to alert people to wildfires because they're battery operated and they don't depend on the internet or the grid. Here's this checklist. This checklist is available at firesafemarin.org. On our evacuation page. It's downloadable in a PDF format. You really ought to have one. Divided into 3 columns. The first column are things that you always do when there's a wildfire burning nearby or there's an evacuation warning or order. The second column are things that you'll only do if you have time. So really things that you'll do if there's an evacuation warning or if you're simply concerned because it's maybe a red flag warning has been issued or we're deep into fire season. And the third column are things that you'll do when you're actually evacuating, when you're on the road, once you've left. We need to be prepared for emergencies because we live here in a place that's just constantly confronted by emergencies. Wildfire Go kits have some special needs, but I'll real quickly run through what I think are critical in your Wildfire Go kit. Flashlights. Doesn't matter what time you evacuate, you are going to need a flashlight. And every firefighter I know carries multiple flashlights, one in every pocket, with backup spare batteries. So have a headlamp, have multiple handheld flashlights, and have spare batteries in your Go kit. Make sure that you've got an AM/FM radio. Our checklist goes through items like spending cash, maybe a duplicate credit card, important documents, copies of your passports, your insurance information, a small first aid kit, drinking water. In your Wildfire Go kit, you need to have enough drinking water to get you out of town. You need to have some high energy food. You need to have some basic tools. Store this in a backpack. We want you to be able to put this on your back and move on foot. Even though we're going to talk a lot about evacuating by car and why that should be your first choice, it still needs to be portable and something that you can take with you if you do need to leave your car in that outlier scenario. Keep these in your car if you're always with your car, or near your front door during fire season. Make a kit for every member of your family, especially for your kids. Make a kit that might be a little different than yours for your pets. It looks like this with your Go kit, a spare set for everybody. And every item shown here, long cotton or wool clothing, long pants, long shirt. Cotton or wool is important. It won't melt from embers. It won't melt from radiant heat. It provides a huge amount of protection to you. Heavy boots, leather boots. That floppy cotton hat they're wearing is important. It's not there for looks, obviously. It's there to prevent embers from landing in your hair. The two pieces of life-saving equipment in this picture and that you need to have in your Go kit are the goggles and the leather gloves. Let me tell you why. The number one injury for wildland firefighters are eye injuries. Those gloves, equally life-saving. If debris falls into the roadway during a wildfire and blocks your passage, it fell there because it was on fire. You very well may be able to move that debris out of the road as long as you have protection for your hands. We want you to think about your pets. This isn't just because they're adorable and we love our pets. It's because people love their pets so much that they're willing to die for them. Evacuation routes. That you ought to evacuate by car, you do need to know the route you're taking. We get a lot of questions about what route, what's the safest place, what is my route during a wildfire evacuation. We want you to simplify this and think about your route this way. Take the fastest route to the valley floor. And the map that you see here is a new series of evacuation maps that are being published in Marin communities as we speak. These are designed to be easily readable under stress by people who are evacuating. The maps are published in a 3-step process with a citywide or a zone map that helps you figure out which local area map or zone map serves your neighborhood. There are links and QR codes that will allow you to download these maps onto your mobile devices or onto your desktop computer. You can print them. Some of the communities will print these and mail them initially to residents in the neighborhoods. The maps are designed to be printed front and back, and they have an evacuation checklist written by Fire Safe Marin.
The Marin Wildfire Prevention Authority commissioned an evacuation risk assessment in early 2021, addressing prevention measures that can be implemented to reduce risks that may affect a successful evacuation before it takes place. The evacuation study identifies and quantifies risk factors like topography, vegetation, traffic constraints, the presence of vulnerable populations, the locations of safe refuges, and the level of preparedness of communities. With this information, agencies will be able to determine and to prioritize improvements that can be made to reduce risks. Learn more about the evacuation study at www.marinwildfire.org. We'd like to introduce you to a new evacuation tool that will soon be launched in Marin County, Zone Haven. This app is going to give local agencies instant and constant information that is viewable by the public. Residents will know exactly what zone they're in, where they need to go in an evacuation. It will help with traffic management and where to put traffic control. As the county gets ready to launch Zone Haven, a Know Your Zone campaign will start so residents can learn which zone they live in and how to use the system.
All right, everybody, we're back again. And I think there's no substitute for personal preparedness. I saw in the poll that we took that almost everybody in the audience today was signed up for Alert Marin. That's really a good first step. When we do evacuation drills and so forth, it's not to test the traffic because that's never going to be realistic, but it does make sense to make people decide if they're prepared or not. Do you have a plan? Do you have a Go kit? Have you thought about what you need to take with you? Probably the number one question we get all the time. In fact, if we have smoke in the air tonight, we'd have 500 people here and about 400 would be asking about the same thing, which is basically, what do I do about evacuation? What you need to do is prepare ahead of time and be the first one out, you won't be dealing with any traffic if you do that. So personal preparedness, big shout out for that. I think it's pretty comprehensive on that. I think we're all in pretty good shape that way. So we are at kind of wrap up time. Is there any final thoughts that you would like to leave? Any takeaways that you would like the audience to have?
Yeah, so we're here to help. We're here to provide information in regards to defensible space, all of our programs and projects we have that happen throughout the year, whether that be our roadside clearing program, chipper weeks, fuel breaks, community meetings. If you have any questions about tonight's topics and what we can do to help assist you, feel free to give us a call. We're here to help.
Great. Michael?
I think Jesse covered it pretty well. You know, we have the staff now to really get out and meet with people and answer specific questions, and we're eager to do that.
Great, thanks. Marshall?
Same. Don't hesitate to call the fire department if you need the prevention aspect to be answered, but also don't forget to share these type of videos with your friends and your family and other loved ones throughout Marin County. There's gonna be probably plenty more to come. We want to make sure this message gets out to the public.
Great. And Fire Safe Marin is here to help too. The website is loaded with good information on it. We got monthly webinars. Tonight's workshop is recorded and available on our YouTube channel. The YouTube channel has over 80 videos covering everything that you could ever think about on wildfire. Take a little time, sift through that. And once again, I do hope you join us for our monthly webinars. The next one we'll be talking about should be a big hit. It's what do we do about pets during wildfire? Household pets, cats, the unusual pets, all the way up to large animals, the horses and cows and so forth. So covering the whole thing. So I really want to thank Jesse, Michael, and Marshall for taking the time to join us tonight. Really appreciate all your expertise and the hard work you're doing down there in Mill Valley and Southern Marin. And one last shout out to the MWPA, who's really has made so much of this possible. It's really an exciting time and it's really just getting started. So I hope everybody stays aboard and pays attention to that. With that, I will bid everybody good night. And once again, a thank you to the audience for having attended tonight and sticking through all this. Great. We'll be seeing you.